Hello, reporter room investigators. Come on in, come on in. Today we're going to be talking about the mysterious disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan. As you well know, there is a $150,000 reward for their return. Welcome to Reporter Room. Come on in. Tell me where you hail from. You can tell me what country, what province, what state, what continent, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Tell me where you're from. And today we're going to be looking into the suspicious behaviors and statements by Malehya Brooks-Murray, Daniel Martell, the children's mother and stepfather. We're going to talk about the involvement of CPS, the Canadian version. We're going to be also talking about important information on these little ones. Thank you so much. I know you wouldn't be here if you did not care about Jack and Lilly. So I'm going to start off just by raising awareness for Jack and Lilly. They just were reported missing on May 2nd. And I do want to say that everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Let's get started. So they disappeared. They were reported missing on May 2nd. They were last seen in public on May 1st by an eyewitness and on video. They're disappeared from Lansdowne Station in Pictou County in Nova Scotia, Canada. It's very unusual to have both children disappear from their yard, and they were reported missing by their mother, Malehya Brooks-Murray, and the circumstances. Their mother and stepfather believe that both Jack and Lilly wandered away from the home. They did want an Amber Alert, but authorities has said that they have found no evidence of an abduction, but they still are considering the possibility of the disappearance of Jack and Lilly as suspicious. So a lot of people are wondering what theory they are working under. There have been major search efforts underway. Lilly is 6 years old with light brown hair and hazel eyes. Jack is 4 years old with blondish hair and hazel eyes. So let's talk about some of the statements, some of the things that have raised some alarms regarding Daniel Martell, who is the stepfather. And we're going to focus on polygraph questions. Let's start with that. So Daniel stated that the polygraph questions did focus on not the disappearance, but the passing away. I'm watching my words here, of Lilly and Jack. That's what his polygraph questions were focused on, asking if he was an accessory to what happened to them. So this was perceived as odd by many. In fact, the behavior panel did a deep dive into his most recent interview, Daniel's most interview. They found it kind of inconclusive. Some things that raised an alarm, and then other things that they found were okay. But it was perceived as odd by some people because it implies that the police, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, are focused on the possibility of the children having been passed away and maybe have been done away with, rather than a potential abduction or a wandering away scenario like so many of us thought. So silence regarding the abduction. Daniel Martell also mentioned that none of the polygraph questions inquired or asked him about the abduction or if Lilly and Jack were taken somewhere. And again, a lot of people found this to be strange, given the fact that two children are both missing, and the parents thought that they wandered away. So wouldn't he have been asked about this? But instead, they seem to be more focused in on the children being murdered. I'm watching my words here. So passivity as an initial reaction. Some have pointed out that Daniel Martell's description of not hearing the children after they went into the kitchen struck them as a passive reaction rather than immediate panic, contrasting what might be considered a natural reaction to two missing children. Now, Malehya, the mother of Lilly and Jack, is also getting a lot of suspicion thrown her way due to timeline inconsistencies. There are inconsistencies in her initial account on the morning of May 2nd, particularly concerning when she woke up and when she realized that Lilly and Jack were gone. She focused on this sliding glass door, this silent sliding glass door. Her statement that the children may have left through the sliding door has been scrutinized by a lot of people who find it hard to believe that Lilly and Jack could get out the sliding glass door, which would have made some noise when it was open, without Malehya noticing. Peter Hyatt, who was a renowned statement analyst, has always told us that one of the easiest ways to bring harm to a child is to neglect them. Details about Jack's clothing. These have been changing. There were reports that the description of Jack's clothing on the morning of his disappearance changed, and this raised a lot of concerns amongst a lot of people who've been watching that. The fact that she left the house. It's unusual for the mother of a missing child, let alone children, to leave the house, especially if she thinks they wandered away. But she left the house. She blocked Daniel on social media. She changed her Facebook post to single, and her decision to leave the residence when her children were missing and not participate in any of the searches and to block Daniel on social media has, rightly fueled a lot of speculation and concern for what really happened to Lilly and Jack. Now, the investigation has been led by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Their major crime unit, I think that's significant. So not just search and rescue, major crime unit is investigating the case, which includes conducting polygraph interviews. And we know that Daniel, was polygraphed, given a polygraph test. And we also heard from Daniel that Malehya was also given a polygraph. Daniel said he passed, and he did not know Malehya's results, although he did ask. So while the search was scaled back on May 7th, due to Staff Sergeant stating it was unlikely that the children had survived, investigators have confirmed that the children were seen with the family the day before they were reported missing. And I think the only reason that the search resumed after May 7th is because of you guys and your focus on this case. I think if you had not had eyeballs on this case, and if this had not generated not just national but international attention, I don't think that they would have continued into the investigation. So there is a reward for $150,000, which is a substantial amount of money, being offered by the province of Nova Scotia for information regarding the disappearance of Lilly and Jack. They remain missing, and the investigation is ongoing. So who has come under suspicion? We've seen lots of theories. This number one suspect, Daniel will tell you himself that as the child's stepfather, that he was suspected, that he was publicly suspected. He acknowledges this in his most recent interview, stating that he is aware that the public has suspected him, and that he said that the police initially considered him a prime suspect. Daniel also reportedly offered to take a polygraph, claims to have passed it. However, one source does point out that his claim of passing it has not been publicly verified by authorities. He is the stepfather to Lilly and Jack, and he also reportedly has children from a previous relationship, 2 children, who he said also described as being a loss. And he also has to have supervised visitation with his daughter that he has with Malehya Brooks-Murray, who is a 1-year-old, and he has to have supervised visitation with her, and her name is Meadow. So he and the child's mother, Malehya, reported the children missing. They said they believe the children wandered away from the home. So let's talk about Daniel Martell's roles and actions. He describes himself as the children's stepfather. He said he lived with them for 2 years in his own childhood home that's owned by his parents. The biological father of Lilly and Jack has not had any contact with them, according to his mother. And he stopped paying child support for Lilly and Jack about a year before they disappeared. So would this have put additional financial pressure on Malehya and Daniel, who just had a brand new baby, Meadow, to suddenly have the bio dad stop paying child support for Lilly and Jack? Would this have caused financial stress, which in turn would have caused arguments and placed pressure on this already very poor family? During the initial response, Daniel stated that he immediately searched nearby dirt roads, culverts, streams, and rivers. He says he has cooperated with authorities. Daniel said he's gone above and beyond to cooperate with the police investigation, including encouraging searches of his family's property. offering his cell phone and banking information and volunteering for a polygraph test. He did give them his phone and allowed them to go through it. One thing that the behavior panel pointed out was that, he seemed to think that it was done and dusted, but they said no, that they would continue to investigate that phone just because he turned it over. But maybe in Daniel's mind it is done, because maybe he knows he didn't have anything to do with it. I don't know what he's thinking. Now on the polygraph, he says he passed it. Related to the disappearance, but the questions weren't about the disappearance. And he claims that the questions primarily focused on the passing away of Lilly and Jack. So I thought it would be definitely worth going back into this interview with him and looking at it now that I've had a chance to watch the behavior panel on this. So let me take this down and put this up. And let's look at what he did say and also what he did not say.
I know the truth. I didn't kill Lilly and Jack.
Can you guys hear that? I just want to do a volume check before I go all the way into it. Just a quick yes or no. Can you hear Daniel?
It's been 6 weeks now since you've seen Lilly and Jack.
Can you hear the interview? Just yes? Okay, Njaz says yes. I can hear it. Okay, thank you so much, Njaz. Really appreciate your letting me know. Christy says yes. All right, great. Thank you so much. Brother Mike says yes. All right. Thank you, guys. D says yes. Texas Life Julie. Yeah, his eye blocking. All right, so let's look at this. And Christy says yes. Okay, so let's watch this now with what we know now. Let me move myself out of the way here. This is Lilly on your left, and Jack is on your right.
You've seen Lilly and Jack. I just want to ask, how are you holding up?
It's been a long 6 weeks. I know that everybody basically in the world at this point is always wanting to know like what happened. It's been.
Now, one of the things the behavior pointed out regarding, they don't do statement analysis, they do body language, but they pointed out his legs were crossed, which I thought was a good sign, because if somebody wants to run or leave the interview, they usually don't cross their legs. They usually will have their feet planted firmly on the floor so they can get up quickly.
From sadness to anger at this point. And I know the RMCP and major crimes are working around the clock trying to piece everything together, and I'm grateful for that.
They also talked about this worried expression that they saw repeatedly on his face, that they thought that was a good sign as well.
But it always leaves the question, 6 weeks has gone by, and we know at this point they're not in the woods. And where are they?
Did you feel in the beginning that they suspected you?
Of course. The stepfather was always a prime suspect right off the beginning.
You felt that from the beginning?
Yeah.
But you don't feel that now?
No, I don't feel that at all. I asked for the lie detector exam, the polygraph exam. I gave them my phone. I told them I do drug tests, because there's a lot of rumors online about a drug party. Mm-hmm. I know the person that said those rumors, and it was just to take the heat off themselves.
Was there any kind of party?
No.
Was there any kind of gathering that someone might have thought was a party?
No.
There were no people at the house?
No, not the night before.
Okay, you mentioned.
And I wish, after he said not the night before, I wish she would have paused there and listened to the response. I think she did a good job on the interview, don't get me wrong, but I wish she would have followed up. Was there a party there any night?
Okay, you mentioned you offered to take a polygraph test.
Yeah.
Did the RCMP take you up on that?
Yes, it did.
And how did that unfold?
That unfolded in my favor. They obviously know I wasn't lying about anything.
So they said, yeah, great.
They also talked about the fact that they aren't statement analysts, but they did talk about the fact that almost all of this is in relation to himself, which is understandable. She's asking how he is and how he's holding up, but they didn't hear an appeal for Lilly and Jack. Now, he's the stepfather, not the father, but they never heard him appealing for the disappearance of Lilly and Jack. But he has in other things. He has on other interviews. So I just want to be fair to Daniel.
Thank you. Come in for a polygraph test.
Yeah, it took a little while to set up. And
when did you do that test?
I don't know the exact date, but that would be At least 3 weeks ago, probably.
So roughly 3 weeks after the disappearance.
Yeah.
And I think most Canadians wouldn't have any idea what's involved with that. Can you describe the process? You go in and just tell us right from the start.
We go in, sit down in a big comfy chair, and they have multiple sensory pads. You have them underneath your forearms, you have them underneath your butt, and you have them underneath your feet with your shoes off. You have a sweat gland on one finger. You have a measuring instrument for blood flow that goes in and out of your hand. And you have a cuff on your arm for blood pressure to measure your pulse.
Were you nervous?
Yeah, I was extremely nervous. Especially with the first question they asked you, did you kill Lilly and Jack?
That was the first question they asked you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, one thing they pointed out is they wish that she right then and there would have said, well, did you? They wish that she would have asked him that. But that might have put him off.
What went through your mind when someone's asking you that question so point blank like that?
Your mind has a massive release of chemicals, I guess you would call them. Just, it's like your stress levels just astronomically through the roof, and your body doesn't know what to do, because it's not every day the way you're hooked up to machines in an interrogation room where someone asks you questions like that.
What other kinds of questions did they ask you?
All the questions pertain to the death of Lilly and Jack.
Okay, so that was like an alarm, I think, for a lot of us that it wasn't the disappearance or they wandered away, but that, you know, literally that it was their death that they were asking Daniel about. So clearly, in my opinion, law enforcement thinks there was foul play, and they were trying to figure out if Daniel was involved. So we have the Halifax noise post here that talks about the full post from the Globe and Mail. And it talks about Nova Scotia's Child Protection Agency investigated the living conditions of Jack and Lilly Sullivan months before their disappearance in early May. A case file has been reviewed by the minister responsible for child welfare. Scott Armstrong, Nova Scotia's Minister of Opportunities and Social Development, confirmed in an interview that the agency had a file on the children prior to their disappearance, but said it would be inappropriate for him to discuss the agency's findings. With Lilly and Jack still missing, the police investigation is underway. It's not the right time to dissect the agency's prior involvement. Well, I think it is the right time. I do. Because if there was, normally, I don't know how it works in Canada, but normally in the United States, you don't call CPS because it's been said that that CPS was called due to developmental delays. You would call CPS because you felt like the children were being neglected in some way, in my opinion. Or that their living conditions weren't safe. Let me know if it's different in Canada, but you don't just call them in because they're developmentally delayed. That would be like a meeting with the parents of the teacher. It wouldn't necessarily be a CPS call. And I do think that when there's a police investigation, it is the right time to dissect the agency's prior involvement. Because should they have removed Lilly and Jack from the home? Were there pressures on this young family with a new baby when the bio dad stopped paying child support? I said, we have no idea when those, and I'm not blaming the bio dad for what happened to them. I'm just saying could this have begun a cascade of events that ended up in Lilly and Jack disappearing? Because everything that Daniel is telling us is that they weren't looking for two children who wandered away when they polygraphed him. He said, we have no idea who those kids are, and we should be focused on helping them and finding them and supporting this family. Asked whether a review had been ordered into his agency's prior interaction with the children, he said, as a minister, I've seen a report. I'll talk to that. I've personally seen the report. I asked for it. I'm aware of how our department was involved in this. So I do think that that's, very, very interesting. And, it does raise the question of, and the fact that Daniel has to have supervised visitation now with Meadow, and reportedly isn't seen having his other kids come stay with him either. I don't know if he's seen them either, but if there's something so going on, I can see if they thought it was just a problem with the condition of the home, but why would you require Daniel to have supervised visitation of Meadow? You wouldn't, just because the house was in disarray, right? He added, I think we should be focused more on those kids than we are looking to blame somebody. Well, I mean, I think we need to find out. I understand he doesn't want somebody to blame, and but I think if they should have been removed from the house because of reports and they didn't act, then it does need to be looked at so this doesn't happen again. Mr. Armstrong said there may come a point where the agency's involvement with the children is deserving of more scrutiny, but now, 7 weeks into their disappearance, is not it. And I disagree with his assessment of the situation. I think now is the time. They're gone. And it is a time to find out what was going on in the days and weeks and months leading up to their disappearance. We now know from the grandmother, the paternal grandmother, so that would have been the bio dad's mother, that she says that her son did stop paying child support. He was homeless. I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming, and I'm glad she came forward and raised awareness, but that he was homeless and that he lost his car and he did stop paying Malehya child support. And they had a new baby. They had Meadow. So what kind of extra pressure did this put on Daniel and Malehya, who were already, looks like they were barely getting by in the house? What extra pressure would this have put on them financially? And did this escalate and cause a cascade of events that led up to the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan? So Daniel was a common law relationship with Malehya and was living with them when they went missing. This is what they told the Globe in an interview in May, that a social worker with Child Protective Services visited the home several months ago. The visit was prompted by concerns that had been relayed by someone at the children's school and related to their developmental delay. Now, this is according to Daniel Martell, and this is where I do want to push back a little bit and say that it is, at least not here in the United States, it is not typical if the children are having developmental delays in the United States. That would be a meeting, a parent-teacher meeting, and maybe a parent, teacher, and administration meeting sit down to talk about the developmental delays. They wouldn't immediately involve social workers in that. If it's different in Canada, please let me know in the comment section below. But I don't see why that would be a CPS call and why Meadow would be having to have supervised visits with Daniel. So on Thursday, the province announced a reward of $150,000 for anyone who comes forward with information on the disappearance of Jack and Lilly. So let me just pull this up. And this is Lilly. I just want to show a picture, and this is Jack. And the Justice Minister, Becky Durhan, said the Royal Canadian Mounted Police asked for the case to be handed to the rewards program. She said the disappearance has been difficult for many people and has garnered interest around the world. And again, if it wasn't you guys' eyeballs on this, I don't think they would still be looking for Lilly and Jack. They would have just declared, like they kind of tried to do, that they were no longer with us, and that would have been the end of it. But we do need to find out what happened. And if it was foul play, then someone needs to be held accountable. And if there was CPS calls because they didn't think the children were being supervised or the children were being neglected, and CPS should have removed the kids and didn't, I do think that deserves a fuller investigation so that this does not happen to another child or children. Says the program does consider and have the opportunity to include cases that relate to missing persons, so it fits within those parameters. If we can do anything at all to support the investigation, we will do it. And in this case, this is a lever we can pull. We are hopeful that the inclusion of the Sullivan case in the rewards program may lead to some information that will help with the case. So I hope it does too. I do think it's, really, really sad that here we are all these weeks later and we still don't have an answer as to what happened with Jack and Lilly. So let's continue on.
I was accessory to the murder of Lilly and Jack. They were all.
So all of the questions assume.
So all, okay, I think that's significant. I think he's telling the truth, but I also think it's significant that all of the questions are about this. Let's just back it up and just listen to this.
Looked up the machines in an interrogation room where someone asks you questions like that.
What other kinds of questions did they ask you?
All the questions pertain to the death of Lilly and Jack.
All the questions. So not some, and some about an abduction and some about them getting lost. All of them.
Are you accessory to the murder of Lilly and Jack? They were all.
So all of the questions assumed that the children are no longer alive.
Yeah.
There were no questions at all about, did you take them somewhere? Could
No.
they be somewhere?
No.
The police have done a number of polygraph tests. They've done 53 formal interviews. Do you know who these people are?
Yeah.
That's a lot of interviews.
It is a lot of interviews. A lot of them are my family, people who live in the area. And those interviews, typically my interview was 4 hours. And
I just want to say that his family, that we do have the paternal grandmother, a bio dad who's speaking out, and a relative, like a second cousin, twice removed relative, who's speaking out. That's and they're relaying messages on behalf of Daniel's mom, Janice. But we haven't heard from Janice directly, and it just kind of feels like they're pointing the finger at Malehya, that somehow she's taken the children and hidden them somewhere. But I'm very skeptical about this accusation. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just very, very skeptical. I don't think that, I think Malehya would have produced Jack and Lilly at this point. There's so much pressure. I just don't see her being able to secret them. But the fact that Malehya was maybe planning to leave that day, I think that is significant. And if that's true, and she was trying to leave with Lilly and Jack, well, then that's a motive, isn't it? Because the most dangerous time for a woman is when she's trying to leave.
a lot of the interviews from my family were 1-2 hours. So there's a lot of time taken up and they ask detailed questions.
Do you know who else actually took a polygraph test?
I mean, I do, but I'm not going to say anything that's going to impede the investigation.
Okay. When did you find out the result of your test?
Immediately right after.
What did they say to you?
You did a good job, you passed.
And how did that feel?
Good.
And did you feel that there was any further suspicion on you after that point, or was that sort of conclusive?
No, that was really when I seen the turning point for it's starting to taper off with investigators.
Do you know if Malehya has taken one?
I don't know if I can say it, but I will anyway. Yes, she did take one.
Okay, she took one. Do you know the result?
No. RMCP wouldn't let tell me I asked.
You said.
And I want to make it very clear that I am not saying that Daniel did anything to Lilly and Jack. But what I am saying is, if this is true, that Malehya was trying to leave, and so what the story that's going around, I'm just going to paraphrase it, is that Malehya was up early and that she was having her friend pick up Lilly and Jack that morning, and that she was trying to get them out of the house, and that Janice, I guess, ran into her. Janice wasn't supposed to be home. That's Daniel's mom. I believe her name is Janice. And so somehow, it's being inferred by Daniel's family members that somehow, Malehya had a friend spirit the children away, but won't tell anybody where they are. Although this is possible, it just seems really unlikely at this point in light of how much pressure is being put onto Malehya and Daniel but I do wonder if this could be partially true. And that the partially true part is that Malehya was planning to leave with Jack and Lilly and Meadow. And that something could have transpired from there.
You said you feel like everyone in the world wants to know what happened to Lilly and Jack.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think this is getting so much attention?
Well, just the mysterious and...
Yes, and I want to be really clear. I also think that Daniel is telling the truth in this interview. But I agree. I think it's hard to believe that she would have hidden the children away. And I see this with every missing children's case. And we want to believe it, right? We want to believe it because that means the children are okay. They're safe. So I don't know who took the children, but if this story is partially true, because sometimes, good lies can be built on a partially true story, which is why parts of it can be corroborated. But if the story is partially true, and Malehya was planning to leave with Lilly and Jack that morning and was planning to take Meadow, did that lead to a cascade of events? And again, I want to be very careful not to point the finger at anybody, because we don't know exactly what happened. But I do want to continue on with this to look at this now with fresh eyes today, in light of what we've heard from the other family members, but also in light of not just what Daniel says, because I do think there's nothing in his behavior. I was like looking to see if he was on some type of medications. I don't see that. When I'm looking at his pupils, they look like they're, a normal size. I don't see anything that's, they're really dilated, which would mean he was on like an anti-anxiety type of medicine, like a Valium or something like that. I don't see a pinpoint, which would be indicative of him being on some type of an opioid. I don't see that either. So I do think he's not on any medication, but the fact that the CPS was called and was out to the house, that was really disappointing to find that out. And then CPS is saying, well, nothing to see here. We don't need to investigate that. We have 2 kids are missing. And I disagree. I think that is probably could be a big part of the cascade of events that led up to them disappearing. And Jack's mother, through another family member, she's not speaking out herself, which I think is also another reason why I'm very skeptical. Not saying she's not telling the truth. I'm just saying I haven't heard her say anything, but statements are being attributed to her. But she's saying that, Malehya didn't want CPS to take Lilly and Jack and was sending them off with a friend. So again, is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? I don't think so. Is this what law enforcement thinks? In looking at this interview again, I do not think this is what law enforcement thinks. I think law enforcement thinks that something dire happened to Lilly and Jack.
Nature of everything and how strange everything is. The RMCP, they have to keep a tight lip on everything, but there's a lot more that meets the eye with the case.
Is there something that you think the public doesn't know that you can share that you want the public to know?
That's a hard one because I don't want to impede the investigation in any way. It is still a missing persons investigation. It hasn't pivoted to any type of criminal investigation.
And behavior panel thought that was interesting too. Again, they're not statement analysts or behavior, but they thought it was just interesting. They were talking about hasn't pivoted, and they almost wondered if he had some type of knowledge that it was going to be pivoted. And so again, I'm not saying Daniel had anything to do with this. I don't know who did this, but it certainly is interesting that Child Protective Services has Meadow, that Daniel has to have supervised visitation. We don't know if Malehya has to have supervised visitation or if she's allowed to have Meadow at her house with her parents. Some people have said she's left that house as well. But there's definitely something, the timeline isn't adding up, and this is definitely getting very, very sketchy. And now fingers are starting to be pointed, not just in a discussion in the driveway outside of our earshot, but literally here on YouTube.
But the kids were seen the day before. I know a lot of people didn't know that. I still see a lot of stuff online that the kids could have been missing for days. They were out of school for days, and they were seen in the Glasgow area on camera the day before disappearance in the afternoon.
Where was that?
I don't know if I can say that, but it was near the Highland Square Mall.
Was it with you?
It was with me, Malehya, and Meadow, and Lilly and Jack were there too.
And are the police aware of that?
The police were aware of that since.
Do they have that video?
Yes, they do. I also talked to my coworker in the parking lot as well, and he verified that with investigators as well.
So now we know the person, the eyewitness, was a coworker of Daniel. So we knew that they were caught on video that day on May the 1st, and now we know that it was who was the person. We knew there was an eyewitness. Now we know who it was. It was a coworker of Daniel's. So to be clear, this could be not Malehya or Daniel. This could be somebody in their inner circle, and everyone's just pointing fingers. Malehya thinks it's Daniel and Daniel thinks it's Malehya, and it could just be somebody in their periphery. Because remember, he said the party, and she said that night, and he goes, no, not that night, but it almost sounds like there might have been a party another night.
So for all the speculation, they were gone days ahead of time, or they were seen the afternoon on camera before the disappearance.
Why do you think the police are asking for video dating back, days before that?
Well, the reason for that is they want to see the traffic of the vehicles on the roads in the area, right? Maybe vehicles that were traveling that area a lot over the last few days prior to hand, or vehicles that weren't seen in the area, or vehicles that were seen in the area, like local people that are, you know what I mean, making frequent trips past the house, or which it's all considered evidence. I mean, the more pictures and videos is the better.
And I do think this interviewer did a good job. The behavior panel didn't think it, because I'm sure from a law enforcement point of view, it didn't feel like a good job. But yeah, Polar says there seems like there's a lot of unverified stories that are coming that vilify Malehya. I agree. And I think we have to just be really careful, because we don't know. It sounds like law enforcement thinks somebody did it, but we as a public don't know who did it or who they're leaning toward. Meme says Daniel has told different stories every time he's been interviewed. Darlene says, I don't think the children will ever be found. A 3-year-old but missing, 5-year-old not far from this location. He has never been found. That's why it's really important that we stay on this case. I know people are like, oh, YouTubers, we hate YouTube. Listen, whether you like YouTubers or don't like YouTubers, it doesn't matter. It's about finding Jack and Lilly at this point. Are there people that are willing to say anything for clicks and views? Probably. I don't know. But you can choose not to watch. You can choose not to give the clicks and views. I am definitely trying to provide you guys credibly sourced information without falsely accusing someone, because we don't know what we don't know yet, but still looking at all of the information. So I thought it was valuable to go back and rewatch this and just look at what he actually did say. I do think he's telling us the truth. So he did say that he thinks that Lilly and Jack were murdered. That doesn't sound like law enforcement was asking him about negligence or them wandering away. Meadow is with Child Protective Services. It doesn't sound like he has the ability to have custody of the other 2 kids for weekends or whatever. He said his family went from, being a family of 7 people to now just himself by himself. But, behavior panel pointed out that he seems kind of resigned. But I also just want to say, in fairness to Daniel, that yes, he seems resigned, but law enforcement came out weeks ago and announced that they didn't think that Lilly and Jack were with us anymore and just wanted to halt the search. And if it wouldn't have been for you guys and your eyes and ears on this case, I think this would be done and dusted. They would have just declared the children as not being able to be found. But because you guys have been so insistent on what is going on with Lilly and Jack, and because there are YouTubers out there making videos about this case, you guys are keeping this newsworthy. And by keeping it newsworthy, it forces the authorities to continue to look. I'm not saying they wouldn't. I just don't know if they'd be going to this extent if it wasn't for you guys.
They say they have hundreds of hours of video.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if they found anything on those videos?
I think it was up to 2 weeks ago, they had footage that they examined for evidence that was 8 kilometers diameter out from the house. So that was after a month. That's how long it took to get footage and review it 8 kilometers out. So
but what's on the video?
I don't know. I'm only limited by what they tell me.
How often are they in touch with you?
Investigators now, I'd say maybe once every 5 days. And usually I'm the one who calls or messages them.
So I thought behavior panel thought this was interesting too. The fact that he was calling and messaging them, and thinks that maybe law enforcement, had to maybe calm him down a little bit, because he may have been really frantic to clear his name. We know he was, offering to turn over his cell phone. He was offering to do a lie detector test. I mean, he was, offering for them to go through everything, search everywhere. So he may have just been really anxious to clear his name, and maybe he was calling more often. And maybe he really was trying to find out what happened to Jack and Lilly. But I do think the fact that we have the bio dad stopping paying the child support right after this little girl Meadow was born, and or right, because she's 16, 18 months, somewhere in there. And we have bio dad that stops paying child support, who lost his car, lost his home. I'm not blaming him, but I'm just saying this caused a cascade of events. This would have caused a family that was already living in very poor conditions to have an even harder winter. And then we had CPS entering at the behest of who? Who called CPS and why? We don't have answers. CPS is like, well, nothing to see here. We don't need to be investigated right now because the focus needs to be on finding Lilly and Jack. But I disagree. I think it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. And we do need to know, what did the CPS person find? And was there a recommendation to move Lilly and Jack out of the house sooner? And if so, and we know from the Harmony Montgomery case, what happened to that little girl? She just fell through the cracks. So if Lilly and Jack fell through the cracks, then we need to find out where the cracks are, patch them up so this doesn't happen to anybody else, any other child.
And how's that changed over the course of the 6 weeks?
Well, from the beginning, it was almost daily, tapering off to where it's only like once every 5 days now.
And how do you feel about that?
It's good. It's good and bad. I mean, I like to talk to them in person about any little small details I come up with, or anything I can try to bring to their attention, which may help the investigation.
And this is where the behavior panel felt like maybe he was, bothering law enforcement with every little detail, and they're trying to do the investigation. And that's why they told them just call every 4 or 5 days.
So I don't get to see them often. So it's always over phone or messaging, and it's hard to really convey what you want to say when you're not in person. But then I also know the eye's not on me. The investigators don't see me as part of the disappearance.
How do you know that?
Well, when you're going from daily to tapering off every 5 days, I mean, I already gave them everything on my phone. I'm the one who originally said, here, take my phone. We'll go through all my banking information. We'll go through all my stuff on my GPS from Google.
And you were offering all that up, right?
Yeah, I offered everything.
And you can see now here we're getting, 9 minutes and 28 seconds into a 10-minute and 35-second interview. And you can see there's been no appeal for Lilly and Jack. But to be fair to Daniel, he may have already resigned himself to the fact that they are no longer with us in light of what was being asked on his lie detector test, which was 3 weeks ago. And also that law enforcement also declared that they did not think the children were with us any longer in a press conference, that he may have already resigned himself to this. So I want to just, give both sides. I don't want to, last thing I want to do is take the parent or step parent of a missing child with just rumors. And, what I see is somebody who is trying to cooperate with authorities.
Why were you doing that?
To show them that I want to get the investigation moving. I know I have nothing to do with any of it. A lot of speculation is you killed the kids. Was come out and say it straight as it is.
What do you think when you read that?
It's a lot of nonsense, obviously. I know the truth. I didn't kill Lilly and Jack. And
so I think he says it as clear as you can say it right there.
I just think a lot of people online they're seeking drama. That's the main thing. Everybody's allowed their own opinion, like I said before, but it's hard on the people that were actually there and missing the children. Still haven't got to see any of my kids, including Lilly and Jack.
So I do think it's concerning that he's not allowed to see any of the kids, including the 2 children from the prior marriage and Meadow. at the time of this interview. Now we've seen since a picture of him with Meadow. I don't know if this is a newer picture. It looked like to me from the caption that this was newer and that he did get to see Meadow with a supervised visitation, which would, seems reasonable.
And that's
Especially if they don't
been
think
really tough going from a family of 7, including my other 2 kids that live in Halifax now. Going from a family of 7 in the blink of an eye, your family's ripped apart and you're left alone.
And this is where behavior panel thought it was a lot about him. And they would have liked to have seen it a little bit more about, Lilly and Jack. Let me know. Let's check in with chat and see where you guys are at on this. Let me see. Oh, okay. There you are. Okay. Let's see where you guys are at. So what do you think in light of the new information? Hey, Florence. Hi, Princess Elsa. Thanks for modding today, Kathleen. Darlene says family and children's services Canada wouldn't be involved. That would be school counselors and mental health. Thank you, Darlene. I really appreciate that. It's the same here in the United States. If you had a child that was just having a developmental delay, and we've heard Malehya talk about them being quite, quote, slightly autistic, then I don't see why CPS would have been called in for that. So I think the idea that they were called in just for that is nonsense. I think there was some other reason, and that Lilly and Jack were, being neglected or something that they said set off alarms. And if there is some truth to the fact that Malehya was planning to leave, and let's just say the story is partially true, right? Because the best lies have some truth to them. And let's say the story is partially true and that Malehya was going to leave that morning and was going to send Lilly and Jack ahead with a friend and follow. I don't know why she just wouldn't have gotten in the car with Meadow. I'm not really sure. But we know that can be a very dangerous time to get away. But this could also just be a big distraction also. So, and family members who aren't, aren't that familiar with the case, and by paternal grandma, and she seems like a really nice lady, but she even admits that she let the kids go, and Malehya wasn't stopping her from seeing the children. She just stopped seeing them on her own. So now they're coming back, and she's advocating for Lilly and Jack, and I think that's a wonderful thing. She seems like a really nice lady, but I do have a little bit of a red flag that I'm listening to what she has to say, but I'm also taking it with the knowledge that she let the kids go, and she's re-entering now. And I just, and then we have Janice that's speaking through someone else who's Daniel's mom. But again, why is she speaking? Is there, a reason that this is coming up now? Is this, are we just still all pointing fingers at each other? And, is this now playing out, not in the driveway on the day that Lilly and Jack disappeared, but now here on YouTube on the platform, which I think is a good thing. I think the more that everybody comes out and starts and talks and keeps talking, the more information we will find out. I do want to say thank you to our producers, Njaz, Sasha Angel, George Brown, and Christy Valentine. And thank you to our channel members. I did leave off one channel member named Nicole Otterson. She said she did not see her name on here, so I will be adding her. And Kathleen, it looks like the D slid off a little bit on yours. So I'll move that over. So I'll be adding Nicole Otterson. And Kathleen, I'll move yours over a little bit. Nicole, are you in here? I can't add it right now because I have to go to another app to add it, but I will add it. I do see Nicole's name. It's right there. So Nicole, I just want you to know your name is there. It's on the second to the last page in the middle. It's just in a different place because I did update this yesterday. And I do want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude to Brother Mike, Donna Bravo, and Esmeralda Real from our last live stream, and gifted channel memberships from Njaz, and another gifted channel membership from Njaz. So thank you so much for that. And I want to thank Under Your Scars for gifting a reporter room membership. Thank you so much, Under Your Scars, for gifting that. Texas Life Julie, thank you so much for the $5 super thanks. I really, really appreciate that. I'll be putting that toward a new camera that I'm getting. So thank you so much for that. And thank you to NJAS for the gifted reporter room membership. Much, much appreciated. And let me add that onto the list. Let me take this down. I think I pulled this up. So Under Your Scars. That's a really neat name. What does that have a significance for you? I'm just curious. All right, so I will add you guys to the list for our next live stream so I can thank you guys again. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to leave it there. Let me take a couple of questions and comments, though. I do want to check in with chat. I do, if you guys were kind enough to come in, and if you're watching, please come up and talk to me. I would like to. Kathleen says, but we don't know if they are unalive. No, but it certainly sounds like law enforcement thinks that. It seems like, at least that was their biggest concern with Daniel. So I think sometimes, I think he spoke the truth. I don't think he was showed any signs of being impaired. He looked like he was sober and telling the truth, but it is concerning that the questions were focused around Lilly and Jack being done away with. So it does make me wonder what they know. Hey, Darlene. Julie says, in another interview, he said there were some questions that indicated something, me paraphrasing, but it was his nervousness. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so remember, the only person that's telling us that he has passed a polygraph is not law enforcement. It is Daniel Martell. So I would, at this point, I'm just taking everything in. I don't want to impugn anybody, but I do want to, encourage everybody to take everything that you're hearing and critically think it through and see if it's a partial truth, flat out nonsense, or true. Could he be a psychopath too? I don't know. I don't know. It's really hard. I mean, he certainly looks cleaned up. Yeah, he does. I mean, the first day he was frantic and he was searching, according to him. So thank you for your heart. And Brother Mike says, thank you for the gifts. Thank you for modding today, Mike and Njaz. Meme says, those two were there that morning. They both have to know what happened. Yeah, I think it is very, very interesting. I've been going around and around in a circle on this one. I think it's a good sign that we have the parents, and I know I don't mean this in terms of their relationship, but it's good for Lilly and Jack that we have them pointing the fingers at each other, right? Because it seems like both of them are saying the other one did it. Now, I don't know if one is trying to set the other one up, or if they don't know what happened and really do believe that the other person had to have done it. So yeah, I think that's very, very interesting. Meme says Daniel has told different stories every time he's been interviewed. Yeah, I'm taking note. I'm taking it all in. Darlene says, I don't think these children will ever be found. A 3-year-old went missing 5 years ago, not far from this location. He's never been found. It is disturbing to think that that children could just go missing in today's day and age, and that they could just be never found. And then it's just like, oh, well, all done, case closed. I think when children go missing, that's when CPS, it needs to go harder. They need to be investigating harder, and they need to be investigated if they were on the scene and involved prior to the disappearance of what was going on. And I'm sure that is happening behind the scenes. I certainly hope so. Polar says, seems like a lot of unverified stories are coming that vilify Malehya. I agree. Polar says, meanwhile, Daniel has various accounts of events. Yeah. This is why I say take it all in. Critically think everything through. Darlene said he didn't go in the water. My gut tells me he was grabbed. And Mimi says, I think it's too early to take sides until more information is known. Yeah, and I'm wondering if there isn't some protecting themselves from a neglect charge, allegedly, in my opinion. If the finger pointing is that, there was a CPS case open. So what was really going on in that house? We know they weren't living very well. It looks like, life was very hard for this young family with a new baby. And child support from bio dad disappeared in the year that Meadow was born. This would have put extra pressure on Daniel and Malehya. And so it looks like they were already under a lot of pressure. So what did happen? Barbara said, same in Canada for reasons the child protective visit delays could have been if the child were neglected or unhappy or abused. Yeah. Under Your Scar says, real dad had not seen his kids for 3 years and was reported by his mom. Yeah, I like his mom. Verona said, do any of you guys know about the Connor Jack Oswald, 16-year-old that went missing 3 years later, found 700 miles away, homeless? 3 years later than what, Verona? 3 years later from, oh, you're thinking about Sebastian Rogers. Oh, I think about him too. That's another one that just breaks my heart. Truth and Beauty says, I think he has some knowledge of the disappearance. Julie says, my intuition tells me, my bones, that he did something. Very interesting. Sarah says, I think that as long as they follow up on all the leads, then it will lead to the truth. Barbara M says, Darren's son is a co-worker of Daniel's. Wonder if he was the witness. I don't know. Well, we just learned it was a co-worker, though, and that's a nice thing about going back and rewatching something sometimes. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to leave it there. If you would like me to continue this case, please give it a thumbs up. Drop me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know that. And also, please subscribe. That lets YouTube know that I did a good job. I have tried to bring you credibly sourced information. I have tried not to bring you things that I'm not able to verify. I think you guys deserve credible information. And certainly, Jack and Lilly Sullivan deserve credible information. Thank you so much for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.